everyone, it's Max and welcome to my June and July wrap up. Now this is going to be long. So I do have a little bit of a system to this because in June and July I didn't vlog, I didn't post like any new content. Well, I guess I did for you, I had just pre-filmed it all. And so while I know you haven't seen a lot of my thoughts on these books, unfortunately I am not going to be going too in depth. I have 25+ books here, so it is going to be a lot. Now, I did read 4 entire series, and my plan with that is to do an overall series wrap up, not each individual book. But first, I am going to go over my challenge books for the month of June. And so I read an October Day book of the month, and it wasn't Chimes at Midnight, it was Ashes of Honor, I believe. This is July's, but I don't have it with me, and so I thought I would just talk about it. I really enjoyed it. This series just keeps getting better and better, and honestly, might as well just talk about Chimes at Midnight as well. It just keeps getting better. I enjoy each story so much. The only one I haven't enjoyed was, I think, the third one, but like knowing the ramifications of what happened in the third one, I feel like if I had known then like the importance of what happened in that book, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But overall, I gave the 2 books 4.25 out of 5 stars. I also finished my last Tamora Pierce book, and so I was reading every book in the Turtle universe, and I finished Tempest and Slaughter, which for now is the last book in the universe. This is a series, or it's going to be. I know the second one is coming out, I think, sometime this year, and I am very excited for it. I just know that for now I have finished all of the books in the Turtle universe. I am so happy. Tempest and Slaughter is nowhere near my favorite. It's not my least favorite. That definitely is still Trickster's Choice, but it's down there. And maybe it's because like our main character is one of the main characters in the Wild Magic series, and so you know like what happens. So he's like making all these friends, and you know like they're gonna be bad guys, and so it's just so hard to like get like into that and like be with them and like be rooting for them when you know like who they become. I kind of wish I'd read this first, and when I'm going to sometime do how to read Turtle universe books, I am going to put this before Wild Magic, because I think it would be interesting to read the prequel trilogy first to root for Ozorn, and then have him be one of the main villains of the Wild Magic series, because that, you know, it kind of sucks. It kind of sucks. But also it would be interesting. You can kind of see like it leading there with his anger and resentment and grudges that he holds, but for now he doesn't seem like that bad of a guy, but you know what's coming. And so I did give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. All right, the first trilogy I'm going to be talking about is the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, starting with The Blade itself, Before They Are Hanged, and Last Argument of Kings. Now, overall, I did enjoy this trilogy a fair amount. My favorite was Before They Are Hanged. I think that the first book was a good starter book. Before They Are Hanged is really where like the political plot starts and a lot of stuff actually like happens. And then the third book probably would have been my favorite, except the last 100, maybe 150 pages was really not great. By the end of this series, I felt like no character, like none of our main characters, none of our point of view characters ended satisfactorily. Like, so I'm just gonna hold up the last one because that's what I'm gonna be mostly talking about. But I had thought like at least one of them, you'd be like, yes, they ended in a good place. And that just kind of sucked. It was just brutal. Like, you know, I'm fine with killing off a main character if it like makes sense, but that's not even what happened. It was like they just all ended like character development, who? Like, what happened? And it was all like, for any character that had development, it was bad. And so all of our main characters deteriorated throughout this last book. And it just didn't make sense. And I'm just not satisfied with anywhere that our characters ended up, because we had a few main characters and none of them were in a good spot when they ended, and it was just like, are you kidding? So it kind of made the whole trilogy feel meh, because it's like, what happened? By the end, they all sucked. They all ended up in worse places than where they were at the beginning. Especially my favorite character, Inspector Glokta. I liked him a lot. This poor guy was tortured. He was a prisoner of war and he was tortured for 2 years. And when he came back, he had been a soldier. He had been really attractive. He'd been a charmer, a ladies' man. Now he barely has any teeth. He's very ugly. And so he became a torturer. And see, that I can understand. I appreciated that. I felt for him because with how much he had been tortured and just brutalized, there weren't many options for him for jobs. And so honestly, a torturer made sense. But by the end of the series, he actually enjoyed torturing. And I did not like that because throughout the whole series, he hated it. He was like, he did what he had to because he was stuck between a rock and a hard place, but he didn't actually enjoy torturing. By the end of the series, he did. And I was just like, yikes. So not a fan of where the series ended. I am hoping, like, there's a whole world series, like, if that makes sense. And I am hoping that in the books to come, we still, like, get more from these characters. And, like, either maybe this was, like, a prequel trilogy with all of the bad guys for the rest of the world. Or maybe, I don't know, I just hope that this isn't, like, the end of, like, our characters and like where they end up, because it just sucked. If as I read more books that is what happens, I am going to lower the rating, but for now I am going to give it a 3.75 out of 5 stars for the entire series. All right, the next series I'm going to talk about is the Sword of Truth trilogy, which is Wizard's First Rule, Stone of Tears, and Blood of the Fold. Now, with this trilogy, my favorite book was, again, the second book. And I think that's because, I mean, we just got so much. We met a lot of characters. We had a lot of plot. I actually really, really enjoyed it. So I'm now, again, going to talk about the third book. For most of these series, I found the third book to be the worst, which is just so surprising to me. I didn't like the third book out of almost all these series. It was my least favorite. And so Blood of the Fold, now each of these books almost feels like a standalone novel in of itself. I don't think you can read each book on its own, but like the first one you could. Like it ended satisfyingly. The other 2 books you couldn't read without reading the first. Like this one you couldn't read without reading the first 2. Second one you couldn't read without having read the first. But each book ended. Like it was done. The plot was totally done. So it felt like they just kept drawing it out. And by this one, even though it's 600 and something pages, it felt like this one's plot line was rushed. It felt like, what? After one book being 1,000 pages and the other book, like, yeah, it was shorter. No, I think it was 800 pages. And so this is the shortest, so that does make sense, but it just felt so unnecessary because it didn't bring that much to the table, and then it felt rushed at the end where I was like, okay, like why was that even like a thing? Like why was that an antagonist? It didn't make any sense because this plot didn't really do much, and then it just felt like, okay, like you wrapped that up really easily. So if it had to be anything, I guess like a duology I think would have been better, but honestly I think it would have been fine with just one book. So I gave this series a 4 out of 5 stars because I wasn't as disappointed in the end as Last Argument of Kings. The third trilogy I'm going to be talking about is the Last Herald Mage trilogy by Mercedes Lackey, including Magic's Pawn, Magic's Promise, and Magic's Price. I did not like this trilogy at all. Our main character, God, if I can remember his name, Vonyl, is so passive. I feel like he barely does anything, especially in the first book. Oh my God. He literally, so he's supposed to be the main character. Well, he lets people walk all over him in the first half of the book, and then the second half he's in a coma. He does nothing. The insta-love is so just, oh my God. And I get it. There's soulmates in this. They have soulmates. Vonyl meets his soulmate. And so it's like instant love. I cannot get behind. The only time I can get behind that is in like smut. because, you know, it's like one and done. It's a romance book. You're expecting fast, you know, fast pace, love, you know, all that stuff. But in an entire trilogy, she could have built it out, and she just didn't. And something happens in the first book, trigger warning for suicide, attempts of suicide, and animal death. It was just like, ugh, it was just so much, and it kind of felt like kill your gays. Vonyl is gay, which I could not believe, because I mean, this is like 1980s female fantasy author, and she makes her main character gay. I was impressed. I'm still impressed. Like, that's an impressive thing to do for a female fantasy author in the 80s. Like, do not get me wrong. But then she killed off his main love interest in the first book. I know that's a spoiler, but I think you should know going in. And then he finds another love interest. But Vonyl never does anything like for himself. It has to be someone telling him like, you deserve love again. And all of a sudden he's just like, do I? Oh my gosh. And I'm just like, are you kidding? He does not contribute to his own character development at all. And I just did not really like it. I want to say again, my favorite was the second book. I guess this is like a trend, but overall it was okay. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. All right, and then the last series I read while in Egypt was the complete Arrows trilogy, including Arrows of the Queen, Arrows Flight, and Arrows Fall. Now, I really enjoyed this. After finishing the last Harold Mage series, I was a little nervous about my plan to read more Mercedes Lackey, but this I really liked. Talia, as our main character, was so great. She lives in this backwater town village where women are just there for baby making and cleaning, and it's like one man with a bunch of wives, but she doesn't want that. She wants to be a herald, and then she's chosen and taken to the academy in Valdemar. I don't know what it's called, and it turns out she is the Queen's own, which is like the Queen's right hand person. And I really, really liked this. I liked our side characters. Again, I don't know, maybe Mercedes Lackey is just really into like total emotional destruction. Like, she destroys her main characters mentally and then like kind of builds them up, but it feels like you're dragging it on, and then all of a sudden, oh, they're cured. And it was just a little bit like, okay, so you're gonna like totally destroy them emotionally and then just like kind of bypass their mental healing. Like, and it's usually like a book. Like, so in the second book, especially in this one, I think it's the second one. Yeah, see, they're so short, and I read them each like a day. So like I can't totally remember like what happened. This one I binge read the entire trilogy, just because this was all I had left, and so like of books that I brought with me, and I still had like multiple days, and so I was like, okay, let me drag this out, and I read one book a day, so they kind of run together. But I think it's the second one where Talia is totally mentally destroyed, and then by the end of the second one, and then by the third one, she was like fine. And so the second book, it was so focused on her mental health, but then like she wasn't healed by the end of the second book, but by the third one, they had kind of like bypassed it. And I was just like, okay, sure. What? It just felt a little too fast. Again, insta love was very, very prevalent here. In this one, even more so, because our Talia's soulmate, like they have like 2 conversations, and then all of a sudden we get like their marriage. And it was just like a little much. Like I needed more between them of some sort to like get behind this. And so I will be interested to see if she does the same in the rest of her series. I'm really hoping not. And I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Maybe even a 4.25 out of 5 stars. This was my favorite out of all of the trilogies I read, which kind of sucks. Okay, I also read a short story called Murder Thy Neighbor by James Patterson. My dad had brought a James Patterson book, which turned out to be 2 short stories in one. And so I read one between each of the Arrows books as a palate cleanser. Murder Thy Neighbor was about this woman who lived in this community right next to a really rundown house, and a guy buys it, and she's like, this is gonna be so great, and then it gets worse, and she takes him to court, and she tries to get him to change, and you know at the beginning that she's dead. So take from that what you will. And it was okay. It was a fun fast-paced short story. I enjoyed it. I gave it like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And then I DNF'd Murder IRL because it was like really weird, and it was like this girl falls in love with this guy and like stalks him on the internet or something, and I just didn't really want to read it, so I DNF'd it. The next book that I read was an ebook because I had no other books on me, and I read the Falling in Love montage, and I can find what the author's name is, but it is about this girl by Kira Smith. And it is about this girl who just got out of this really long-term relationship with who was her best friend turned girlfriend, and her mom is suffering from early onset Alzheimer's or dementia, and she is dealing with learning that it's hereditary and she might get it, and then also trying to like heal after a heartbreak and trying to decide whether or not to go to Oxford. And her dad is getting remarried on top of it. Now she meets her arch enemy's cousin, who is a girl, and it is female, and that girl loves rom-coms, and she decides to give our main character like the rom-com experience with the Falling in Love montage, where they do all those fun montagey things, like be in a riverboat and like go karaoke singing and like all these different things. And, you know, I'm sure you can guess what happens next. I really liked this one. I feel like our main character's worries weren't unfounded. A lot of times I find in, like, YA contemporary, I'm just like, okay, like, come on, like, that is a little ridiculous. But she's honestly just like really struggling with learning that she could get dementia at her mom's age and all these things, and being like, well, then maybe I shouldn't be in a relationship and do anything, like, and like, what's the point of even like trying to live a life if she's just gonna forget about it? And I just really appreciated our main character, Saoirse. She pronounces it not Saoirse like the actress. I think she pronounced it Saoirse. She went on about that a couple times, but I did really like her actually, and I really liked the book, and I gave it a 4.25 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Not You, It's Me by Julie Johnson, and this is about a girl who finds out her boyfriend is cheating on her at a basketball game when they get on the kiss cam, and he ignores her, and so the guy who's sitting right next to her, who happens to be a super rich guy, kisses her instead. And it kind of sets off this like feud between this guy and his cousin, and she gets caught in the middle of it, and so he kind of takes over her life, and like she has to live with him because her ex-boyfriend is now like a stalker and destroys her apartment, and it's a romance, but it's also like, it was a romance. This was okay. It was okay. There was a little bit of that alpha male thing where he like moved in all her stuff and didn't tell her about it and all. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm like not into it so much. I thought that this was gonna be more, I thought they were gonna be friends, like he kissed her. I feel like the summary made it seem like, you know, he kissed her and then was like, listen, I can't be in a relationship right now. I need to focus on my work and my career. And he was in the bad spotlight for a long time, and so he wanted to just focus on him. I was so into that, and I thought she had given up on romance, so I thought maybe they would get like a friendship. A friendship would bloom because he helped her out and they really had a lot of fun and they connected, and then like at some point fell in love. No, it went from, oh, we can't be dating, to, oh, I moved in all your stuff and I love you. And I was just like, too much. And I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read, I got it in the Jordan airport, and I was so excited, and that was Troy by Stephen Fry. And this tells the history of Troy. If you don't know, this is the Trojan War and Helen of Troy and Odysseus and Achilles, and that is where a prince of Troy falls in love with Helen of Sparta, and they run off together to the city of Troy, and it starts this decade-long war. And I really liked it. There is art interspersed, and that was probably like the wrong one to show you since there was a naked woman on it, but you know, here we go. I really like this. I think Stephen Fry did such a great job at explaining things really well. Did I get a little lost sometimes? Yes, but I really liked how everything was connected. Like, one of the characters was actually the creator of the Olympics, and finding out like how Priam got his name, and the reveals were so crazy. He gave the story of Priam, who is the prince of Troy who kidnapped or took Helen away his dad, and he had a different name until like something happened, and it was like they started saying the boy who was bought, or the prince who was bought, and in Greek that's Priam. And I was like, what? blew my mind. I was like, oh man, I couldn't believe it. Blew my mind. Loved it. Gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I think if you ever want to get a more in-depth look into Troy and Sparta and Ithaca and all those cities that are mentioned in the Iliad and the Odyssey, definitely pick this up. I really enjoyed it. Okay, the next book I read was an arc that I got of Josh Malerman's Goblin, which is 6 short stories that come together to tell the story of a town. It was okay. Like, none of the stories were that connected. Like, the only thing that connected them was the town, but none of them really even had like much of a plot, and they all ended vaguely, and it was just okay. I gave it like a 2.75, 3 out of 5 stars. And then I bought an ebook one time, like forever ago, and I just decided to pick it up, and that was The Wolf at the Door by Charlie Adara. And this is about a human man who had been attacked by a werewolf and almost died. And because like he worked for the FBI and they couldn't like make him forget what he saw, they put him in the Bureau of Special Investigation. It was BSI, and it is like supernatural FBI. And when people start going missing in this small town, it looks like wolf attacks, and he goes to investigate. He's paired up with a werewolf from that town, and it is a male-male romance, and they start to have feelings for each other. Our main character kind of has to get over his fear of wolves, which again isn't unfounded, having been attacked by one, especially as he gets to know his partner. He starts to realize not all wolves are bad, and he starts to get feelings for him. I really liked this, actually. I think their relationship was really interesting. I really liked our main character. He wasn't speciest. I don't know what to call it. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, they're mutts, werewolves are blah, you know, like it's bad. But he is like, he's not like that. He's just honestly scared of them because of what happened to him. He doesn't actually think that this guy's gonna attack him, but he flinches. Like PTSD almost. And so I can appreciate that. And he like promises, he's like, I promise. He's like, it's not because you're a werewolf. It's not because like, you know, he's like, because his partner thinks that he's just speciest and like hates him. And he's like, no, that's like not it. I just like, and then finally when it comes out that he had been attacked, it really helps alleviate the tension. And I just really enjoyed it. I think that there was quite a good plot twist of like who did it, and I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. And now I'm running out of room, so I'm gonna go clear out some room and I'll be back. All right, I'm back. So the next week I decided to read all of the Fairy Loots I owned. So I only have 3. Now I have more since my June Fairy Loot has arrived and my July Fairy Loot is arriving this coming Friday. It is Saturday when I'm filming this. But the first book that I picked up was The Bright and the Pale by Jessica Rubinkowski, and this is about a girl who was one of the only survivors from a time where her city was totally engulfed in ice. And the king or czar has been trying to like find any stragglers and kill them, and she's been hiding in a nearby city as a thief. And she was raised by the like queen of thieves with a guy named Aiden, who became like her best friend. I think his name's Aiden. Alec. My God. And then a year after she thinks Alec has died, she is taken and kidnapped by a pirate, like some other guy. And then she finds out that Alec is actually alive and he has been raised by this guy. And the guy wants her to take them to her city because in that city there was this ore or mineral that was mined and is very expensive, and it's like it'll bring him a lot of riches. I ended up really enjoying this, actually. I kind of ship her with someone other than Alec. I am honestly not the biggest friends to lovers fan unless it's done well. Like, I feel like a lot of times it feels just like super rushed and like insta love because you haven't had the time to like grow to want them together. Like, I think Percy Jackson does it really well, where it takes them like 5 books from becoming friends to actually like kissing. I enjoy that. It's when it's like in one book they go from being friends to like being in love that I have such a hard time getting behind. But besides that, I actually really liked this. I liked our main character. I liked the plot. I am excited to see what happens next. I think it's only a duology, so I only have one more book, which is really exciting. And I gave it a 4.25 out of 5 stars. The next book that I picked up was The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. And this is about a girl who is, as the title says, a prison healer. But then when a rebel queen is brought in, she is tasked with keeping her alive to be able to complete these 4 elemental trials. She gets a letter from her family saying, we're coming, keep her alive. And so she decides to take the trials in her place. She is also becoming close with a recent prisoner. He's very attractive and hulky, and it was okay. This I really liked up until the last page. Like honestly, I think it was the last page had a reveal that I was like, are you kidding? I cannot. So it was third person, but we're in her head. Like, it's like she thought this and she's thinking that, you know, like you're in her head, just third person. And so if you find out that like the person whose head you're in has like a plot twist or like a reveal, I'm like, no. You can't have a reveal. We've been in your head this whole time. I wish what they should have done, honestly, is that there was magic users who could read minds. So she honestly could not think about it without them being able to find out. Then I'd be like, okay, you couldn't even think about it. You had to so fully block it out of your mind that you couldn't even like, there was nothing in there for us to catch on about. Then I'd be fine. But this, she just like had a reveal of our main character being like, I'm not going to say what it is, but she has a reveal in the end, and it's all for just like shock value. Like literally one of the last sentences was so just, I was like, okay, right, sure. It just was a little absurd. So it went from like a 4.5 to a 3.75 because honestly, it ruined it. It ruined it a little bit. And then the last book I read for my week of Fairy Loots was Witches Steeped in Gold by Shannon Smart. And this is about 2 witches. One was the old heir to this throne because her family was overthrown and she's been put in a prison. The other witch is the current heir to the throne. Neither of whom like the ruling queen. Now, I would suggest not reading the actual synopsis because what it talks about doesn't happen until like after the 50% mark. So what I'm going to say is our ex-heir helps plot a revolution at the prison so that she can become a soldier to protect the queen. And as she gets closer to the queen, she is going to try and kill her. Now, our current heir is working with a current rebel group to overthrow her mother. That's all I'm going to say. I think that's all you should know. Also know it is not female, which I also was kind of hoping it would be. I feel like it would have been perfect. And I know our author isn't against that because the current heir used to have an older sister and she was gay. Of course, she's dead now. Not a spoiler, she's dead before the book even starts, but it's kind of like, okay, kill your gays again. And it was just like, it was okay. I really liked the beginning, but as I kept waiting longer and longer for the plot that they gave us in the Dust Jacket to happen, I was getting more and more bored and antsy. Now, the last 100 pages was really fun, really fast paced. I really enjoyed it. But up in like the middle section was just such a drag because I kept waiting for the plot to start. And so that's why I gave you that one, because if you go in with that knowledge, then it's kind of okay. You're into it. But knowing that something was going to happen at some point was just like, kind of brutal. It's over 500 pages. I don't think it needed to be. I think they could have cut at least 100 pages out of the middle, and I ended up giving this a 3.75 out of 5 stars as well. All right, and then the last book I read in July, holy moly, this video was not as long as I thought it was gonna be, thankfully, and I think I've done a pretty good job at like keeping the pace. But the last book I read was A Queen in Hiding by Sarah Kozloff. And this I enjoyed. So this takes place in a world where it's all like your rank is based on your hair color. Or maybe just the country. I mean, it's a country. And the queen and the heir have blue hair. And then everyone else under them, it goes like caste system almost. And that, but then when the queen realizes that a revolt is about to happen, she takes her daughter and they escape. She leaves her daughter, and then each queen and heir has a magic power. Our current queen has the power to make people forget, and then our heir has the power to talk to animals. And our current queen leaves her with a peasant family and takes their memories so they don't know she's like the heir. And as she goes off to find her husband, who is the current like captain of the armada, and her brother. And I enjoyed it. Now, I don't think it was necessary. I honestly think the series would be able to start with the second book and just have this be like revealed, this first book be revealed throughout the second book. Honestly, nothing happened that contributed to, I think, what's going to be the series plot. Because, like, the series is going to be about our main character, Cerulia, taking back her throne. And this first book did nothing. It spanned many years of her just living with this peasant family. That's it. And then, I mean, I guess this is kind of a spoiler, but I don't think so, because you know that this is following Cerulia taking back her throne. Her mom dies. And she doesn't do much in the first book that would be needed, like that we need to know going into the second book. I just don't think this book was necessary, but I did really like Cerulia, and I am excited to see what happens with the plot overall. So I am going to give it a 4 out of 5 stars, because I am like excited to see what happens. I just don't think the book was necessary in the least, which kind of sucked. I was kind of like, okay. I mean, the beginning, I was really into it. It started off with a bang, I flew through it, and then it just kind of started to dwindle. There are multiple parts, and one of the parts, like, we didn't even have Cerulia in it at all, and I feel like we followed characters that we didn't need to follow. We followed someone named Thalen. I don't even know what, he's like a soldier, but I don't know, like, why we're following him, and, like, didn't have to. We followed the guy who overthrew Cerulia and her mom, but he doesn't do anything either. So this book didn't feel like it needed to happen. So just know that going in, and once I read the second book and like the series, maybe it will be like, oh, this was totally necessary, but at the moment it just wasn't. So I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I do have reading vlogs of me reading the Fairy Loot books and A Queen in Hiding. So if you want any more of my in-depth thoughts on those, go check out those reading vlogs. But I will see you soon with another video. Bye!